Okay, so you started in policing in roughly in the 90s. In the 90s, the war on drugs, as our own government referred to it, is in full swing. You said you were undercover for a time as well. Tell me what you've seen transpire. Do you see any progress there in the war on drugs? Tell me, what do you think about the war on drugs?
The drugs aren't going away; they're just changing, and we're seeing them. We're seeing the drugs change. We're seeing them come out of different places. They're becoming more creative in the way they smoke them and they ingest them and they shoot them. No, the drugs aren't going away. Prescription drugs. Prescription drugs are big. I mean, look at how we're abusing prescription drugs all across the nation. That's legalized drugs. No, the war on drugs is still, there's still a war on drugs, but it's not going away.
So there's a lot of players in the war on drugs. There's everybody from politicians to obviously law enforcement. You've got different federal agencies. You've got a legal system. You've got the health system is involved in this. All those different players probably have different perspectives on the war on drugs. What do you think your role in the war on drugs is as a police officer? What is your role specifically, and where does your role come from? Who tells you what your role is going to be in this war on drugs? Because I mean, obviously you're not a legislator, you're not making the laws, but you got to enforce them, right? So talk to me about that.
Well, there's some bit of cynicism when we start talking about drugs, because I don't want to sound negative about it, but I will be factual about it. We are not going to beat it. All we can do is just keep beating it back. I see our role as, we can educate. We can just continue to educate people, and we can continue to be in the schools and hope that we get through to some of the kids. On the streets, on the road, we can continue to pull as much of it off the streets as we can pull off the streets. But to be quite frank, for every bit we pull off the streets, there's going to be a lot more get past us. A lot more. I don't know how we're going to beat. I don't know how we're going to beat it.
That was going to be my next question. Can you win? And if you do win, what does victory look like? What does that mean? At what point can we say, okay, the war on drugs is over, we've accomplished it?
I would like to give you an intelligent answer, but the bottom line is that we can't beat it. People have been looking for their next high for centuries. I mean, as far back as you can remember, if they're not smoking something to change the way they feel, they're drinking something. And if they're not drinking something to change the way they feel, they're ingesting something. And now people are sticking needles in their arms. People have been doing this for centuries, all across the world. This isn't something that's new. It's not new.
If you could be in another aspect, let's say you could run for Congress and you could be a congresswoman instead. Using the experience you have as a police officer, how would that inform the decisions you would make going forward from that perspective?
The consequences, if the consequences are higher, you don't see as many people be willing to take as many risks. In our country, in the United States of America, if people are caught on their first, second, third drug offenses, they go to drug court, or they get fines, or they might on the third offense do 30 days. Those really aren't large consequences for people to pay. So I think that the consequences need to be much higher. And yes, there needs to be more restrictions. Doctors have to be held more accountable. I think that when dealers need to be held more accountable, I think that people actually being caught with the drugs need to be held more accountable. But as a police chief, as police officers, we only have the laws that they give us to work with. And, you know, we can keep arresting people and turning them in and taking them to the jails, but when the jails are overcrowded, they're going to give them a $100 bail and turn them loose. Those people are home before we get our reports done. And if we arrest somebody and spend weeks working on a case only for the DA to tell us, "Yeah, sorry, we have more important things," so they no complain it in court, 6 weeks later. What are we going to do about this war on drugs? Not much.
What other countries have succeeded in the war on drugs by increasing enforcement and penalties?
Well, I don't think any country has wiped drugs off the books. I don't think that any country has been successful, but I think there have been countries that have been more successful than us. We've got a huge problem here in the United States, and a lot of it, and it's not real simple. I mean, the reason why the district attorneys are no complaining a lot of these cases is because they're backlogged. Okay, it's not just their fault, and the reason why the jails are to get the people out quick, turn them over and get them out quick, is because they're overcrowded. The reason why they're overcrowded is our country has an issue with, being overcrowded and having too many people in the jails to begin with. There's a lot of issues here in the United States of America. It's not just because we're easy on the people, and it's not just because the laws need to be tougher. There's a multitude of issues here, and a lot of issues that we need to deal with, not just one. I'm not saying it's just because of the DAs or because of the jails when it comes to drugs. Our jails are overcrowded.
Why are they overcrowded?
We're going to be talking for 4 hours tonight.
You can quit anytime.
Well, our jails are overcrowded because, no, I don't want to get into all that. I don't want to get into all that.
So I'm sure you know way more about this than I do, but I've obviously read about populations in our jails, and our population, the population of our jail system is largely from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, certain colors of skin that are overrepresented in jail when compared to their average percentage in the overall national population. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. This is obviously a big topic right now, but across the nation we have roughly 13-14% that are African American descent. Mm-hmm. However, our jail populations have a lot higher number as a percentage of black skinned people. Mm-hmm. When you're, day to day on the street being a police officer, do you see that as well here obviously in a New England town?
Well, here where we are, we don't have a high population of black families here.
I think Maine is like around 2%.
Yeah.
So do they represent roughly 2% of the jail population?
I don't have those numbers.
Okay.
I don't have those numbers. We don't have a jail right here in our town. I can tell you we have a jail, in each county. Uh-huh. In our county, I don't know what the numbers are. I can't imagine it would be too high just because our black population is so low. I can tell you for our town, our black population is just a point of a percentage. Black arrests are 2 or 3% of our arrests.
Okay.
So we border a city that has a much larger population of black citizens, and I suspect that that's where we get the 2 or 3%, you know, kind of the spillover from their city because they do
You think
travel.
their citizens are committing crimes in your town?
Well, they travel through.
Right,
You're
okay.
right. They travel through. It's bordering our town, so I suspect that's where we get that 2 or 3% of all of our arrests are black. But our population is like 0.5%.